I'm Blake.
I'm Lily.
I'm Razteria.
And this is
OnlyBands! Awesome!
Yes. Well, hi, Razteria. It is so nice to have you. This is our podcast, OnlyBands. Why don't you give our beautiful fan base, which is kind of cool, a little bit about your music, who you are,
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm an artist, producer, engineer. I started in the world of producing songs in about 2005, and I do music that's like a cross of world music with pop elements, EDM, Latin, reggae. But I'm primarily a songwriter, and then I've kind of acquired all the other skill sets, so the engineering side and production side and musicianship side to kind of be able to bring these songs to light, to more people, and rather than just having them for myself, although that's where it starts, but and I'm my background. Well, I was born in New Jersey. I grew up in France. My dad's Bolivian, my mom's Dutch, and so I have a lot of influences from the Americas in general, and then also from Europe. And I've had the opportunity to live and work with people all over the world in music and in other things. So so that's me in a nutshell.
That's very
and right
cool.
now I'm in San Francisco Bay Area.
Very
in El
cool.
Sobrante, to be specific.
Awesome. I'm gonna admit I had never heard of your music before, and then Blake said, "Oh, hey, we're gonna be interviewing this person." I'm like, "Oh, I better check out the music." I was shocked at how all of your music has different elements to it. Like you were mentioning, it has that Latin influence, it has a little bit of reggae, it has a little bit of everything, and it just comes together so well. And I think that's a lot of the production just seems to put it together really well. I was like, this is the first time I'm listening to something, and I'm like, I've never heard anything like this before, and I love it. I just think it's a really cool blend.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a bit obsessive, as I was saying before we got on this call. Like if I'm producing something, I mean, I'll literally be eating it, sleeping it, waking up with it, and all of the little ear candy that you hear. Like, I don't know how you're listening to the music, but I'm very
big headphones.
I love ear candy. So I put a lot of little hidden things in it. So, to get those hidden things in there behind, obviously the song is the primary thing. And I'm very obsessive about that's the song's strength, so that it's on its own strong, but then all the little production elements, it's one of those things. Yeah. It's, I don't know how it's like a wonderland, it's like this space that you literally can just get lost in. And the sonar, it's a therapeutic, it's so many different things. And I'm obsessed with it. So,
and it's incredibly unpredictable too. Like you're listening and you're like, I have no idea what's coming next, but I'm excited for it. Like I need to know what this next song sounds like, because like you're saying, you're getting lost in this wonderland, and you're almost getting like this kind of wanderlust going on where you're like, I need to finish this journey. And it was just really interesting to listen to. And I was listening on big headphones, and you can definitely pick out like the small things that you're talking about, like the little like tidbits that you put in there for the sonar people who are trying to really listen to these details.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to make it accessible to people who just like to listen to something and then just dance to it, or maybe sing a little piece of it, and then also to audiophiles. So it's both of those things. Yeah. So
that's very cool.
Yeah. And I have to admit, listening to your work is just absolutely incredible, because you feel like you're in a different world almost. And it's just very captivating. The entire song, each and every one of them, is just so unique. So why don't you tell listeners about your latest release that you have coming for them?
Yeah, sure. So this release is called Space to Play, and the title track is Space to Play, and that comes in 4 flavors, basically. That track itself, there's like a vintage 60s version that's in Spanish and English, and then the original version, which is just me, with like a little synth line and a little bossa nova guitar, and then a more Latin acoustic trio feel. And this song is in 6/8, so it's got it's a slower song. I don't write a lot of songs in 6/8. It's like has a waltz feeling. It's very kind of meditative, and it goes along with sort of it goes along with the song itself, which is make some space to play, which is this idea of, you know, finding this time every day, even if it's just for a little bit, to be creative and to be unique, whatever's making you unique, you know, to give that space. And it's work to do that, right? Because it's a lot easier to just like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm just going to chill out. I'm going to look at something on Netflix and then be entertained, right? It's very different to be like, okay, I'm just going to have silence. I'm going to write in a journal. I'm going to draw something, whatever it is you like to do. I'm going to go plant something in the garden, whatever it is, you know, there's so many things but you know, we forget that this is really I feel like it's an innate part of making us human. And I know I'm going off a bit of a tangent of how this works back into the album, but because of basically me allowing myself this space, you know, you have all of these sort of messages that come out and these very distinct, yet they all tie together somehow, expressions of, you know, some sort of, because I honestly think that all these songs, like, had I not opened that channel, somebody else would have opened it and they would have taken some version of this energy that's come out, right? It's like it's some sort of passage from a different dimension. That sounds kind of way out there, but I really think that, like, I'm just the channel, right? And this is like coming through, you know, however I'm able to manifest it. And in my case, it's the form of a song, right?
Yeah.
But so anyway, so like that's the main track, and that sort of weaves through all of the songs, but every song has a lot of different, as you know, we're mentioning, like, different elements, different themes, and, you know, I also have very specific messages, you know, just one, for example, is just recognizing, you know, when to say stop, you know, so whatever pattern in your life, be it in relation to other people or yourself, stop. And that's just a simple example of a very simple message and yeah, there's so many more. I won't go down the list. We'll continue. I'll stop my monologue there.
No, this is exactly why we brought you on. We want to know more about it. It's very interesting when you say, like, people kind of get into their hobbies of watching Netflix and kind of taking in other people's creativity. So they're absorbing other people's creativity and other people's content, but they're forgetting about their own creativity. And just as you're saying that, I'm sitting there going, you're absolutely right. Like, how many times when you sit down and you're watching a show that somebody else created when you could be exploring your own creative side? Like, I think there's a really distinct message there that I didn't get until you just said that. And I'm like, absolutely, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I fully support that as well. Like, I was literally just reading a book last night. Like, that's absorbing someone else's, like, work, or even going as basic as like computers and posters that we put on each other's walls, or the blankets that we make. Like, we're just constantly absorbing each other's creativity, when in reality we could be the one making those things. And I think, like, everything that you said is so true, and it just struck me in such, like, a personal way. Like, I never thought of that, but it's true. It's impossible to deny.
And it's not that
everything that we have.
It's not that taking other people's stuff is bad. Whoa, we just lost camera.
Sorry,
there we go. No, you're fine. It's not that absorbing other people's creativity is bad, because that's what creativity is. It's all about the sharing experience.
Yeah.
But it's about finding that balance between, yes, you have time to take in other people's creativity, but you don't want to lose touch with your own creative side. How many of us as kids had hobbies that were creative and fun that as we become adults, we just stopped doing? We stopped caring about any of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, people say all the time, oh yeah, I used to be a guitar player, you know, or I used to dance, you know, or whatever it is. I used to write in my journal. I used to do this. I used to, it's like, well, you did it. So it's still part of you. It's still something, just because I feel like we all have this concept of time that it's a definitive, that it's like it passes, and then you're like, you've moved on to something, and you can never, it's like it's not about going back there. It's a continuum. Like there's you know, time is our construct anyway, right? Time is so abstract, and we can stretch it, you know, like it's this idea that we're lacking time to do this, that, and the other. I mean, there is obviously, we are physical beings, so we have physical limitations, but like, you know, you say, oh, I don't have time for this, but you make time for it. It's like, okay, I don't have time for this, but hey, maybe I don't need to spend an hour cooking. I could spend half an hour cooking. And then that other half an hour, I could do something else, you know? I mean, we have so many choices. It's crazy. But we have so much time on, you know, like as compared to like other people in other times, in other history. Like, you imagine, like, although you know, when you think about this, if you go all the way back and you think about like hunter gatherers, right? They like spend their day like finding food, but then the rest of their day was leisure, right? Because they didn't have any bills to pay, you know, they just had to find enough food, you know, and make sure they're safe.
It was just survival at that point.
And but their survival, but still, I know I'm obviously very much idealizing, you know, and you know, there's still indigenous people who live very close to these lifestyles that still exist. And I've had actually the opportunity to live with them for brief moments of time when I was working on a few volunteer projects, and there's a sense of peace. It's this strange thing that it's like when you take that time just to be, and it's not idle time either, you know, it's this, anyway, it's a beautiful, it's almost like we make ourselves do so much in our lives that we lose sight of the most basic thing, which is just to be, you know, and be, you know, and so anyway.
So I have a question, and because I kind of want your take on this, because you said something very interesting about, we always as people in this day and age feel like we don't have enough time to do these things, and yet every single technological advance that's made is about conveniencing us and giving us more time. You were talking about, maybe I don't spend an hour making dinner, and I was sitting there thinking, like, that's when somebody DoorDashes and it becomes somebody else's time. So what does somebody else do with that time that they've now kind of given to somebody else? So where do you think that idea of, because technology is giving us more time, when you look at a person's actual, like, time that they're in a car and they're traveling, time that they're making food or ordering it from somewhere else, why do you think we constantly feel like we don't have time if technology is constantly trying to give us more time?
Well, because I think at the same time we're getting distracted by what technology also brings, which is this sort of unlimited, so we have basically these distractions, which, you know, are unlimited. They're, you know, at this point, you know, we want to go, I don't know, watch something. I'm a little bit, I'm guilty of this too. You know, we're all, this is the society we live in. Right now, I'm sort of binge watching news about Tesla. Like, I'll like go, and I don't need to be watching this stuff. I really don't, but I am, you know, this company is very intriguing to me, and so on and so forth. And like what they're trying to do with technology, and it's very positive, but it doesn't mean I need to spend an hour a day like watching all the latest results of the thing. But it's like, it's there, and there's all of this information out there, and it's like a little bit of a, you know, it's like, okay, I want to, like, my instead of being like, okay, after dinner I'm gonna go finish my song, it's like, oh, let me check this first, and then that time is goes.
It turns into 30 minutes of you checking just one thing.
So it's like this catch-22. It's like we have all this technology to you know, to do to save us time, but then that same technology, we just spend it immediately, right? It's like the same thing with money. It's like we're making more and more money and we're spending more and more money. You know, it's not like we're, you know, it's interesting.
We're displacing our time rather than actually losing time. We're just refocusing it in places where we don't always need, but we're losing ourselves to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you made some really good points as well in regards to technology, because there are so many people out there who, I don't know about you, but for me personally, like I get so lost in technology, especially like social media, that like I forget about the other times that like I was so much more involved in just my general day-to-day life, because I was so focused on like my technology that I had and feeling like I was never going to have it again, when in reality the chances I'm never going to have again are the real life opportunities, the real like times that I could be spending like writing songs or something. And so I think that's a wonderful point that you brought out, because technology can be amazing, it can be life-saving. Like we wouldn't have the healthcare systems that we have today in terms of like the world and technological advancements in that way. And at the same time, technology can make us feel like we're displacing it in the wrong aspects of the world, because it's almost addicting in a way, you know?
Just like you said, it's that catch-22.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this interview, we're not saying turn off the interview, watch to the end, but this is philosophy for after. Then you can go back and reflect on, why did I watch that whole hour interview? Then you can talk about that and then share it with your friends. We're talking about technology, and then we're sitting here on technology, like giving people information. I'm just sitting like, guys, don't turn off the interview. We're not telling you to do that, but
no, not at all.
We are reflecting, because I'm gonna like throw myself out there. I'm a little bit older than Blake over here, and I do absolutely remember when you got information not on the internet. You got it from somebody telling you, or you got it from a newspaper or something like that. And now we have such just access to the world. The idea that you can have an experience from halfway across the country just from your phone, like that is just, like you said, it's a catch-22. It absolutely is. It's amazing for technological advances, but at the same time, we are losing ourselves to it. Sorry, Blake, not to call you out for being younger, but like there was a time before cell phones and internet and all of that great stuff that we've gotten so used to now. I tell my students all the time, like, guys, I grew up without internet. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, we had dial-up, but even that was towards the end of my school time. Like, I don't think people realize that this world, it's not what it was even just 15, 20 years ago.
No, you're totally right. I am such a child compared to you, and like, okay, that is established, very true. But also, let's be fair here. I do remember having to go in the encyclopedia and like turn page per page, and I remember when these like weird ass big flip phones were a thing, and like there was no like social media anywhere. The first iPhone though did come out when I was 7 years old.
Oh,
but no one knew
Blake,
of it.
no, stop. You're making me feel old. Part of my whole teacher persona is I constantly have to call myself out for being old. So I'm just saying, there is definitely that time before internet, and you would have like, your friend would be like, hey, you have to hear this amazing band, and then they pull out a tape or a CD. They're not like, oh yeah, I'll go on Apple Music and I'll go check them out. It was more about physical, the physical things that you would keep with you. Now, like, people have physical things, but a lot of our world is online. Like, if somebody, it's terrible, right? But if somebody loses their possessions, they still have an entire world sitting online of photos and interactions that they have with people. Yeah, they might lose their computer or their Switch, something physical, but you still have that metaphysical everything that we just keep online, like an online diary that's never going to be touched.
exactly.
We're getting very philosophical here. I'm just saying, I think this conversation is so fascinating. The way that you're talking about displacing time and the catch-22 of technology, I could go on for days talking about this.
Oh, I'm sure we both could, and I will gladly make you feel old in the process.
You would not fail at that.
I know I would, and that's the weird thing, because the weird thing about me and my age is that I grew up in a time where we were just in the very beginning transitions of like technology getting big. Like, I remember like for like so many assignments we had to like go through the encyclopedia and like read books, and we only had CDs with these big VHS tapes, you know? And then like in middle school, all of a sudden like all that changed. And
it was almost
like,
in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it was like none of that existed. But I remember like having to put in like a giant VHS tape to watch some of my favorite shows. And I remember when like computers were only barely just being a thing. They were huge computers, you know, like the huge
Super
monitors.
fat.
Yeah,
really, really
they were
big.
massive, and we were only able to fit like 2 of them in like our entire classroom, and that was in 5th grade. And we had iPods, but they were really just MP3 players. You know what I mean? Like,
Zunes.
And then
I remember those.
Yeah, and the next thing I know, everything changed. And that was like in middle school, really, it was the defining point, like 7th, 8th grade. Really,
well, I mean, Google wasn't invented until 1998. And I think Google definitely kind of has a lot of this responsibility of people all of a sudden realizing that information is just right there in front of them. And the fact that Google is only old enough to drink barely in terms of how long it's been around is alarming with how fast technology has been kind of just going off of that. You were talking about being interested in Tesla's company. Like, think about Tesla trying to do what they do now without having the technology that came in like the late 90s. Like, it would not have been possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, so we're at the edge though of another major technological transition. And I mean, I'm hoping that we are, because if not, the whole world's going, because we need some major change right now, in particular on how we use energy, how we generate energy, so on and so forth. And that's why I'm following Tesla quite a bit, because they're literally at the forefront of this move towards a more sustainable future for us by, you know, through basically their whole strategy was, okay, we're going to first advance the technology, hence luxury electric car, right? And then make it available to the masses, all the while developing an energy company based on solar. So, and that's only one little tiny little piece of it. So that's gigantic. They've literally forced the whole entire auto industry to accelerate the change towards electric. Because otherwise we'd basically still be in what they call the ice age, which is the internal combustion engine. Right. So, and we're going to transition. We're transitioning. Of course, here I am like this, you know, I've never even driven in a Tesla. I see them, but
I dream of it every single night, but I haven't.
I've been in a Tesla a couple times. My cousin owns a Tesla.
Oh yeah. I'm going to plug this in.
Oh, you're fine.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, good. Real quick though, going back to kind of you and your music.
We've gone off.
Because I love our conversation, but we've gone totally off the focus of you, and I want to bring it back. Real quick though, how you've created such like vastly different yet intricate songs. So what is, like, where do you get these ideas, and where does the process kind of start? Because all of them are so uniquely different, yet they all like have your own personality in them, and there is like some very small like similarities in each of them that really show off like who you are as not only a singer but an engineer.
So, you know, that's a really hard question, because every single one is different. Like, every single one started differently, and it just keeps on getting more sort of the way something starts keeps on getting more and more diverse in a sense. It used to be that I would basically have to have, so when I started writing music, I was really young. I started, my first song I wrote it when I was 12. And at that time though, like I didn't know how to write a song without being inspired, right? Like it had to be a moment where I would come, and I didn't even really know how to play any instruments at that point, but I had access to a guitar, and like I would just make a little, you know, and then the basically everything had to come at once. Like the harmony part, which is whatever I'm playing on the guitar, together with the melody and the lyrics, when I first started, had to come all at once. So it had to be like this sort of, this divine moment of inspiration that was usually triggered by some sort of little mini trauma in my life, like getting my heart broken, or like, you know, stuff with, you know what happens when you're going through that period of time in your life, you're completely confused, everything's changing. And I moved, actually, my whole world was sort of split apart for various reasons at that point in my life when I started writing. And so that's when I started, that's the way they had to start. But then as I started honing my songwriting skills more in, so like, I would say actually probably about 10 years ago, is when I started to hone my skill set more and just be very regimented about it. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to write a song today. And I would start with anything. I'd be like, I'm going to write a song and the BPM's going to be 111. And so I would, and then I'd have some sort of concept in my head, like, I'm going to cross, you know, I'm going to cross Afrobeat with heavy metal, you know, like from a rhythmic standpoint. But then of course it becomes something completely different. And so sometimes I'll start with the melody and the lyric, and then sometimes it'll literally be a BPM. So, and then what happens is I just start layering things because I can record things myself. So I just layer, go back, realize half of it is shit. Excuse my language.
Oh no, we say
get
things
rid
like this
of
all
it.
the time.
Okay, I get rid of it and then start again. And now what I'm realizing is it's funny, I don't need to be inspired. Like I don't need to be inspired. I literally can just, what I do now is I have a journal. I just open it to a page and I improvise what's on the page. So if I need if basically I already have the music there, I've started collaborating. I'm saying like right now, like at this moment in time, I'm actually not talking about Space to Play. I'm talking about what I'm writing right now, which will actually, I'll start releasing it later this year. But I'm actually starting to collaborate, which is different because I used to do everything mostly myself. Now I'm like open to making myself more vulnerable with another person, right? Who's there, who's like, okay, I have an idea for music. Let's see what you got for melody and lyric. And I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna see what I can. It's weird. It's like, it's a process, but what I know is consistent is the feedback loop of just perpetually trying things, listening, trying again, listening, redoing, re-recording, and then finally coming to a point where you're like, enough. And
stop
going into the mixing, mixing, post-production, and that's a different world from the composition world, right? So, and then sometimes it's very specific, like I want to write about this specific thing, right? This specific thing is dear to my heart and I want to write about this specific thing. So sometimes I can do that too. So yeah, it's, you know, and the song Space to Play, that came because I literally was practicing. I was practicing scales on the piano. I'm not a very good piano player, and that's why I was practicing. But the reason that I'm not a very good piano player is because every time I try practicing, I end up writing something. And then I'm like, okay, well, I need to finish that idea, right?
But then it turns into your job and you're like, you're not having fun anymore.
I mean, no, I really want to practice. Like, it's really, I want to learn how to play the drums. I want to learn how to be like a really, like someone who can just noodle around on the guitar. I can play guitar, but I'm not like some virtuoso guitar player, like I definitely know music and whatnot, but that's not the skill set that I'm an expert in, right? So anyway, I don't know if that answers a bit.
It absolutely does. And would you say you kind of started writing, like when you stopped waiting for an outside inspiration source, would you say you kind of started writing music from more of a technical standpoint? And it also sounds like you kind of became your own inspiration. You talked about opening your journal and kind of just taking something, being like, okay, I will write a song about this. But you're using your own content to create more content. So you're inspiring yourself in that way.
Yeah, and also I want to point out that it sounds like ultimately what it comes down to is having intention to want to write music. Like having that intention, I feel like without your intention to like write a song each day, there wouldn't be this like diverse kind of music that you've created, which has all started because you intended to create something. And I feel like that's so important, and something that so many musicians tend to forget is that intention to practice and that intention to create. Even if you're not fully in the mood or your mental health is struggling, like at least you're intending, like that intention is there, and then whatever else comes of it is going to be beautiful.
I mean, that's the thing about this very simple message, space to play, is making that space, is that it starts with the intention, right? Whether or not the intention manifests into an action is something else, but it does start with the intention, right? In
this case, intention does matter. It's not it's not just the end result, it's what you're trying to do with it. And you talked about you would wait for inspiration, like sorry, you would go through a breakup or something like that, or put yourself through some kind of mental stress. And so many musicians do that, trying to create inspiration. That's just not healthy. We've talked about this many times before on the channel about people don't need to put themselves through this kind of tragedy just to be able to write a song that they feel is adequate. It's not the way that the industry needs to go. You can't just sit there and capitalize by putting yourself through these emotions. It's terrible for your mental health. So being able to be your own inspiration and take the technical side of writing music is definitely, it seems like, the healthier option here. And it seems like you're generating more from it. Because I'm not going to lie, your album, Space to Play, there are a lot of songs on that album. Like, you see albums now where people had inspiration for like 10 to 11 songs. And you kind of look at Space to Play and there's a lot that's there. Like, there's a lot of different style of songs, but there are also a lot of songs. So it seems like you're generating at a much faster rate compared to someone who's waiting for that outside source.
Yeah, I mean, that what you're talking about right there in terms of the outside source, like I literally was convinced, I convinced myself, okay, this is gonna sound kind of silly. I was like, I'm gonna be single forever because I'm a songwriter and I need to perpetually get my heart broken in order to write music. Like I literally thought that for years. And now I know that's not true, although I am single and I've been single for a very long time. And but it doesn't have to do with that anymore. It's a choice, and it's like, it's better to be alone than mal acompañado, than poorly accompanied, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of, it's a shame, a lot of artists, and I think also a lot of like substance abuse, and everything like that. It's like all tied to this sense of how can I need this, because it's an intense process too when you're writing and you're trying to bring this thing to light and you're trying to make it good and you're trying to make it something that other people will relate to and that will feel right, and it's really intense. And if you hit a wall and you see that self-doubt there and it comes in and you're like, I'm good for nothing, Yeah, I know it sounds super dramatic. I mean, but in the moment, when you're in the moment, you're like, I'm worthless.
Yeah.
And, and then and I can imagine if I can understand like why somebody would, get lost in some toxic pattern, to try to, get themselves out of that. But then again, perpetuate that, right? Because it's a very interesting state of this bittersweet, melancholic, dark state, when you're making something, but it doesn't always have to be the case. Like, and I still do write in those bittersweet, dark, melancholic states, but it's different. Somehow it's lighter and it's more sustainable. I could literally be that way. I am that way a little bit every day. Like, it's part of the emotional spectrum, because we also have to recognize we're humans. We go like this, right? We're not perfect, and like, it's like we're going to go through these extremes irrespective of what happens, right? We can't control anything, but yeah, so it's interesting. And I think also one of the things with people today and about not allowing themselves this time to be creative is people try to force themselves to be always happy, right? It's like, or to be all, it's like, and also a lot of people on antidepressants or all these substances, which I don't want to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's something that is strange to me, that we're sort of medicating everybody so that they're all their emotional spectrum is like this instead of like this.
You need to have those emotions, but again, it's all about that balance. The medication, for some people, it balances, but there are a ton of people who are medicated or seek that medication when just having those emotions is completely natural. It's when you have the other things, the mania, the other issues, that the medication helps, but you still got to feel those emotions. We can't go through life being robots.
No, exactly. And I want to point out real quick that Mission Music believes that if you cannot make your own serotonin, store-bought is fine. Yes. That being said, please do not use medication to suppress your general other emotions, because general feelings of sadness, granted it's not extreme as depression, are healthy.
It's
like, anger can be healthy.
If you need to cry, cry.
Yes! Yes. Let your feelings out. It's when it becomes destructive to you or others that it's a problem. That being said, I totally agree with everything you said. And I think it's interesting that so many people expect like a specific med or drug or whatever to make them this version of happy that society deems, when the reality is that emotions are temporary and you're not going to feel happy 24/7. That's called mania.
The world is not written by Aldous Huxley. We're not all taking joy to feel happy the whole time. Like, that's not the world we live in. And would you say, just expectation-wise, would you say people expect women to write more on emotion because they view us as being more emotional creatures? So do you feel like it's kind of out of the ordinary that you try and write things technically rather than trying to always just go off of emotion?
As you mean with respect to being a woman?
Yeah.
It's funny because I've only started to think of, this is going to sound funny, I've only started to think of myself as a woman recently. I'm not saying that I haven't, obviously been, I'm a woman, but in terms of relative to my position in society, what I've gone through in my life, what my experiences are in music, how I write, I mean, it's very interesting because I've only really started to have that self-exercise more recently, which is kind of interesting to me because I have a lot of other identity things in my life, like where I'm from, like wanting to really grasp onto it's not that little, the portion of me that has indigenous roots, like that whole like deep, part of myself that obviously, I haven't had a ton of exposure to, but I really still value it. And I want to learn as much as I can from, that set of values and history and whatnot. But this thing about women in music and women in engineering specifically, because I've been asked this question before, and I never really thought about it. I just went for it because I wanted to write songs, and like and I realized that acquiring this skill set, you know, just would empower me more to be more independent and actually not reliant on others, be it men or women, primarily men. I mean, it's actually really interesting because I've sort of had this shift in my life a bit where my first piece of my life, like literally I lived with men, I worked with men, I was literally me and men, right? And now I am surrounded mostly by women. And I have and I've acquired this skill set that I don't need any I don't need any of these typically masculine, you know, whatever that, you know, it's interesting because I never really made that, you know, obviously I could tell that I was maybe, you know, that there was a difference in balance, but I didn't overthink it too much, I guess. And it is interesting though, just to kind of observe it at this point. And I honestly, I feel like we're just humans, you know, and, you know, we're all energy, and we're all, you know, some sort of expression of this unique energy. So especially nowadays where we're kind of labeling everybody in different ways, I'm not even like set on so many of these. It seems it's almost like with the labels come more limitations.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? Mm-hmm. So I'm, you know, it's really yeah. And I don't mean to say that it isn't like, we need to be, you know, talking about everything, obviously. And obviously there's so much historical, you know, oppression. If you know, if we talk, you know, it's very, very much about what's happening with the discussion of race, which is really coming up now. But I feel almost like it's come to a point, especially the political state right now, where it's like, you believe in this, I don't believe in this, you're this, you're not that, this, when ultimately we are 99.9% the same. You know what I mean? I'm just saying from a standpoint of being human.
Yeah.
And we've lost,
when you talk DNA.
We've lost this, you know, we've lost this fundamental understanding. And I, like, when I approach somebody, when I meet somebody, I don't, it's hard. It's like, I'm not seeing, or when I approach writing something, I don't approach it from a standpoint where I'm like, I am writing this as, you know, however I am perceived as a woman, as maybe somebody perceived me as white, maybe somebody else perceived me as Latina, I don't know. Or somebody else perceived me as European. Is that any different? I mean, like, or somebody perceived, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't approach it in that sense. So this question is it's just, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but it is interesting to think about. And I kind of see that, as I said already, this interesting pattern where I've evolved now, kind of being in a world where I'm very independent and the people around me are mostly women, from a world where I was more dependent and most of the people around me were men. So it's just interesting. I'm saying specifically for music. So.
And I did not mean for that question to kind of make you feel like you had to put a label on yourself. My biggest thing is, you always hear like this female artist broke up with her boyfriend. Oh, we should hear an album coming out from her soon. I feel like society expects that from women. Like, women have to write from their emotions rather than just being technical, being able to put out these amazing songs from a technical standpoint that weren't because of a heartbreak or because of having a wedding and they're happy in their marriage. Like, you have to break apart from that. And I think being a technical writer, just, you have that ability to teach people, like, you don't need these events in your life to be why you write or why you create. And I think that's kind of where I was coming off. I was absolutely not trying to, like, make you start talking about your own labels. Just, I feel like society sits there and they're like, if a guy has a breakup or if a guy has something happen in their life, they're like, oh, that's so terrible. But, like, if a female artist has a breakup or a divorce or something happens, they're like, oh, well, we'll be expecting music from them soon.
Right. I hear what you're saying.
And I feel like that is such a toxic way of trying to make the music industry in general. Like, if a guy wants to write a song about being emotional and crying, go for it. Like, you don't need to sit there. It seems like male artists these days have two emotions, and that's horny and angry, and that's what they write their songs about. But there's that whole spectrum that's being missed on the emotional scale, and that's kind of where that question was coming from. I did not at all mean for you to be like, I don't, like, put myself in that situation. I was just saying from your perspective.
No, I think the thing is, a lot of people still, like, when I do present myself as a songwriter, as an artist, as a producer, as an engineer, they don't realize, and they hear the music and they're like, oh, who's the singer? I'm like, I'm the singer. Oh, that's nice. Who produced? I produced it. They don't realize.
Exactly. You did all of it. Oops, sorry.
They don't realize it, and I'm like, that's okay. They don't need to know.
They think like you had a production team that did all of this part for you, because that's just kind of what's expected. You have the musician who's really good at music, but then you have the producer who's really good at producing, and you have the distributor who's really good at distributing. And it's not that it needs to be all these things. You can do all of it on your own, and you're definitely proving that.
Yeah. Real quick.
I know we always keep going off.
We are running short on time, so I just want to end this podcast with the question that Zach usually asks, but we've been asking it for them lately. If there is one message that you'd like to get out with your music to your fans and to your listeners, what would that message be?
I would say just to be inspired in life, and life is too short. And, you know, if anything, all you really need to do is just look outside and look at the sky. I mean, the world it's gigantic. Like, and if you feel like you're stuck, it's only temporary. I know that's more than one thing, but I mean, everything passes, you know, and everything is for a reason. So I you know, feel the roller coaster of emotions, and know that it's just gonna keep going, and you know, so you can do it. You can keep going. And
I love that.
I love that.
And
that's really wholesome.
And you guys can definitely check out the new album. It released the 28th, so it's very, very new. Yeah. I'm assuming it's on all streaming, all services, iTunes, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you guys can definitely check that out.
Spotify, Apple.
And do you have any kind of like in-person touring that you're doing, or anything like that you want people to know, like where they can find you?
So right now I don't, I'm, you know, the thing is about touring, I really want to, but the thing is, it's hard right now.
It
like
really
to get good shows. And I made a decision in 2018 that basically I was just going to focus on production until I could get shows where, like, didn't have to make sure the sound was correct, sell all the tickets myself, promoted myself. Like, that's a whole other, you know, world. Like I did that for a long time, and I love performing. And it's going to come again soon. So I know that I have a few radio things coming up, local radio here. I'm going to do a live radio performance on KPFA.
Very cool.
In the beginning of December on a show called La Onda Bajita, which is a like a bilingual show, and then basically just my plan is to keep releasing music every month. So just, you know, after this album, I'm going to release, you know, a single every month. I'm focusing on music in Spanish and also hopefully in French. So yeah, that's mostly right now just virtual world still. So
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Better to stay safe. Yeah. So what a wonderful ending. I'm Blake.
I'm Lily.
I'm Razteria.
And this was
OnlyBands!